Pastor Tim here, and today we're going to cover a very difficult subject, and that is, how do we deal with loss? How do we deal with death and the suffering and grief and sorrow that comes with living a life after our closest loved ones have passed on? Now, before I get too far into this video, I just want to quote something Jesus says early in the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted." Now, the ultimate answer to this question is we got to lean on Jesus Christ. He's the one that gives us comfort. He's the one that assures us that death is not the end for us, that there is life through him. But even in light of that, I know it can be hard to focus on those things in these moments of loss. As you can see in this video, it's me taking a hike. And much of what we're talking about today is reflected in this hike I'm taking. As you can see, it's late in the year. It's a time of year that it's getting colder, the air's more bitter, the days are shorter, the nights are longer. And as you can see, while this trail I'm on is very beautiful, it's still muted colors. All the leaves have fallen. Much of the vegetation, flowers, and pretty things of nature have passed away for the season. And it's that time of year it's easy to get caught up in our sorrows and grief. You know, many people, rightfully so, will be celebrating the holidays here shortly. And it's wonderful to celebrate those that are around the dinner table for Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, or just a gathering of loved ones and church members and neighbors, and all our loved ones. But many people will see not who is at the table, but who is not. We'll be reminded of who we've lost in the past year, maybe even for years ago that we've lost somebody. You know, for me, Thanksgiving is still a joyous time, but every year there's a moment I realize that I'm not eating Grandma's food. Grandma's not at the table. And I dearly miss her even after 15 years. So this video is for all you folks that are dealing with loss, struggling with death. And I hope you find some help in this video. And maybe you can even learn something that you can help somebody else dealing with these very problems. As you can now see in the background is this beautiful rock face. And in this video, we're going to hike to the summit of this mountaintop. But this is such a good symbol of how sometimes we feel lost in our grief and sorrow, and we feel like we're deep in this valley and we're looking up at this mountain, this massive expanse for which we feel like we can't get to the top. We can't overcome the pain and grief and sorrow of our loss. And here's the harsh reality. Sometimes we have to recognize that we cannot climb that mountain on our own. We cannot get through this problem on our own. We have to inevitably admit that we need help. But the good news is there is help. I'm going to get personal for a moment here. As a pastor, one of my jobs is to deal with funeral services, to be there for folks who are dealing with this very problem of loss of a loved one. And everybody deals with death differently. And there's no right way to deal with it. There is wrong ways to deal with it. We need to recognize we need help. And that goes for us pastors too. I'll never forget the first funeral that I did. It was actually for my baby niece. She wasn't even a year old when she passed away. And looking back on it, I don't think I handled it in the best way. It was easy for me to, instead of focusing on my need for help and my need for comfort, to instead focus my attention on loving and serving those in the family that were greatly devastated, like my sister-in-law, the mother of the child, and my wife, the aunt of the child, and many others. And it was an honor to handle a lot of her services. In fact, I distinctly remember there was this sadness that after the funeral service, we couldn't have the committal service because they could not dig her grave due to large amount of snowfall and the melting of that snow causing the graveyard to be so saturated they couldn't get equipment in. So after a week, I knew the family wanted closure, and I got up with some friends and we just hand dug the grave. And in many ways it was a blessing because I was still able to do something for my niece that I love greatly. But after we dug the grave and had her committal service, I realized there was nothing else I could do. There was no amount of work I could do to help beyond what I had done. And a good friend of mine and mentor, who was also a pastor and taught me a lot of things, often says at funeral service, he says to the family at the graveside, "This is as far as we go." And eventually we got to realize that there's only so far we can go in this life. There's only so much we can do. But there comes a point where we have to realize that God will take over. That there's only so far up the mountain we can climb on our own accord and work, but eventually we need Him to get us to the top of that mountain. We have to trust in Him and His power over death, which He demonstrated through Jesus Christ. That death is not the end of life for us, but just the beginning of life eternal in the kingdom of heaven. So we have to trust in His work to get us to the top of the mountain. Jesus says, "Come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." You know, it's important that we know that we can't carry our burdens, our griefs, our sorrow, our sin on our own. And that's what Jesus is here for. He's come to save us, to redeem us, to offer us life after death, to offer us hope for those that we love that have passed on. He goes on to say, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." You know, as a Christian, we become yoked with Christ. And anybody who knows anything about a yoke knows that when two animals are yoked together, the stronger is able to pull the weight of the smaller one. So we still have to trek up the mountain. And it can be a hard journey. It can be a struggle. But we know we can make it because Jesus is there for us, carrying us in our weakest and most vulnerable moments. Yes, we can't deal with our sorrow and loss alone, but with Christ we can overcome anything, including death itself. My prayer is that if you are feeling at a loss, if you are dealing with your grief and sorrow, you will come to know the Lord is there for you, that you are not in this alone. Not only do you have brothers and sisters in Christ that are praying for you and there to lend a hand, but no matter where you're at in life, no matter how alone you may feel, know and trust that Jesus is there for you, ready to carry the load for you. And I pray that one day you reach the top of that mountain, reach that summit, overcome that grief and sorrow you are experiencing, and rejoice in knowing that you are with the Lord has saved you, and the Lord will get you through every trial, obstacle, and pain and suffering you are going through in your life. I pray that you get there one day and experience the joy, comfort, and peace that comes with having God in your life. So as we conclude our talk and our hike today, I have one request of you. If you have been blessed by Christ and you've gotten to the top of that mountain through Jesus Christ, and you know the peace and comfort and joy that comes with knowing Him, knowing that He has defeated death in your life and the life of all that come to Him in faith, I want you to do something very difficult. Now that you're on top of this mountain, I want you to turn around and go back down the mountain. I want you to go back to this world that is full of people that are still lost, that are still dealing with their own grief, their own sorrow, their own loss, and witness to them that there is hope, that there is a path forward, that there is a way back up that mountain through Jesus Christ. Be the help to them that Christ was to you. Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. God bless.